Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Ryker, Masai Ujiri made his press conference after winning the championship. He had his kind of closing week presser, and he announced there's a lot of speculation, with the Washington Wizards being out there offering him seemingly ownership and all of the money. Masai Ujiri shut down any speculation that he was going to leave Toronto. He said Toronto's his home, he's planning on staying here for a long time, and he plans on convincing Kawhi to stay as well. Both of us are just huge Masai Ujiri fans. We know his value to the Toronto Raptors roster. How reassuring and honestly joyed do you feel about hearing Masai say that?
Well, Ben, obviously people would love for Kawhi Leonard to stay on the Toronto Raptors. That makes sense. He is the person playing. He's the person that people are paying to watch.
Yep.
And he is the person that delivered the first ever championship north of the border ever in the history since the conception of the NBA. But with that being said, the most valuable piece of this Toronto Raptors franchise is Masai Ujiri. The moves that he made, right, in trading away a franchise piece and firing a coach of the year, in finding all these developmental players and now getting a most improved player of the year in Pascal Siakam and getting all these undrafted guys or late round picks. This is all completely orchestrated by Masai Ujiri. So even if Kawhi Leonard doesn't stay, I will be a heck of a lot more reassured that we don't need to go into some sort of perilous 20-year downswing that, like the Raptors have been, because as soon as Masai Ujiri was introduced in the first place, that is the beginning and the birth of the modern era Toronto Raptors. So, this could be an extremely hot take. I think it's more of a warm take, but Masai Ujiri is pivotal to this Toronto Raptors team.
Well, Ryker, it might be a hot take, but I'm in full agreement with you. And just for people that don't realize, the Toronto Raptors were arguably the worst franchise in the NBA before Masai Ujiri came around. Us and the Hornets. The teams that were perennially not the worst team in the NBA, but always the middle pack that never made the playoffs. Masai Ujiri came in, immediately traded Bargnani for a pick that ended up getting us Kawhi Leonard. So shout out to Masai Ujiri there with that 5D chess and that immediate trade. He flipped Rudy Gay for that package of Gravis, John Salmons, Chuck Hayes, and Patty P that put us from the 11th seed to the 3rd seed. So Masai Ujiri is just an all-out genius in terms of constructing a basketball team, and he got us a superstar, as you mentioned, without being a free agent destination. It's very rare for people to trade for a superstar without giving up an all-out superstar. Obviously, DeMar was an all-star and a superstar in Canada, but not necessarily amongst the NBA. Masai Ujiri he validates the Toronto Raptors in a sense. They're so professional. He brings in great guys around him as well, because Bobby Webster, he's another person that's done a lot for bringing in Kawhi Leonard and Nick Nurse and all these guys. Masai Ujiri just knows how to construct an organization, put the smart people around him, build a roster that might not necessarily be the most talented, might not necessarily have Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, but people that fit together, the right personalities. And in my opinion, Kawhi Leonard, yes, he's the best player in the NBA, and he's ridiculously valuable to this franchise. But if Kawhi Leonard gets injured, if Kawhi Leonard ages, we have Masai Ujiri in this franchise for who knows how long, and we'll be a perennial playoff team, championship contender with Masai Ujiri in the front office. So this is a long-winded rant, but I'm in full agreement with you right now.
But even more than just, you mentioned guys like the Steph Currys and Kevin Durant's, and really that story there, yes, the Golden State Warriors, when their owners came on, I believe that the team was valued at around $1 billion or less than $1 billion, right? And now it's valued at more than $3 billion. So that sort of growth for their net worth of the owners is incredible, right? And the GM of that team did really good, but the Golden State Warriors are a desirable market, right? The Toronto as a city is maybe one of the least desirable teams to play on, because they had a superstar at one point in Vince Carter who very publicly left the team. After that, the best players were usually European players, right? So to bring in any of the superstar American players up to Toronto, whether it be they never had the assets to acquire anybody via trade, right? And to convince or to lure anybody over in free agency is absolutely... It's impossible to do, right? Because even if there's a city that's less fun than to be in Toronto, right? The tax implications of coming up to Canada. There's just no argument to make. And Masai Ujiri was able to really just, like I said, just masterfully construct a team and now make a place that I think could actually have a lot of appeal for future players to want to play in. And there's a whole bunch of other factors. But Ben, besides him just being so pivotal and so important for this Toronto Raptors team, a lot of nice things now have happened in terms of his connection with DeMar DeRozan, Dwayne Casey, the things that he has going on for his volunteering and what he's trying to do in the larger community. So maybe you want to break those down too, because he's a really extraordinary human.
Certainly. And to build off your point about the Toronto, it's not that Toronto's not a desirable market. Like, the city is gorgeous. It's one of the best cities in the world. It's just the perception of the Toronto Raptors franchise and the perception of Canada from a lot of the American players. They had to go after Europeans and all that sort of stuff. But Masai Ujiri completely changed the narrative around Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry wanting to stay. He was the first big superstar that wanted to stay and re-signed. Then DeMar followed, and he completely bought in. And then, as you mentioned, Kawhi Leonard, they traded their assets to bring him in. So that's something that Masai Ujiri did. But as you brought up, Masai Ujiri is not only just valuable in terms of getting players and building a culture of the Toronto Raptors, he does everything around the league. You know, the Giants of Africa program that he has built down in Africa, it's truly remarkable the amount of people he's getting involved in the communities, bringing NBA players over there, inspiring guys like Pascal Siakam. The Giants of Africa program, there's actually a picture of Serge Ibaka being down there with a young Pascal Siakam, training him and just inspiring these guys to play sport and all the power it brings. Masai Ujiri is a truly remarkable man, and you mentioned it. He still has connections with guys throughout the NBA, and even the guys that he fired, he traded away. DeMar DeRozan, you briefly touched on it. He, in his press conference, Masai Ujiri mentioned how DeMar DeRozan came back and gave Masai Ujiri a hug and asked him how his family was during, 1 year removed, half a season removed from trading him from his home, sending him away, and all the drama that went behind that. Apparently, he still communicates with Dwayne Casey. He's just a guy you want to have around your franchise, even if he wasn't the best GM in the NBA, right? He's a guy that you just want to have around as a community builder, everything. He's honestly perfect. He's the perfect GM. I hope he's a Toronto Raptor for life.
Yeah, and he embodies really the Canadian mentality, and I think that's why people really embrace him, because he's unrelentless, right? He is loudmouthed at the proper time. He's been fined in multiple playoffs for exclamations that are inappropriate in the league, but he's genuine, he's methodical. And I was also listening to an interesting podcast, I guess, or maybe it was a video on YouTube just talking about GMs in the league, because they don't often get that much recognition. Coaches get recognition, but that's usually as high up as you will go. But other great GMs, Danny Ainge of the Boston Celtics, that was sort of the comparison that they were making, and they're saying, well, really, Danny Ainge has done well in maintaining the Boston Celtics roster as somewhat of a contender, or at least a playoff maker, despite them losing all their big five or whatever it was at the time that they had, the big three at the very least. But the difference maker, and the reason that you can't compare them, is because Danny Ainge, besides trading for Kevin Garnett, he never did any gutty moves, right? He picked up Kyrie Irving in free agency, but that's not a big GM move, right? The thing that makes...
He picked up Kyrie from the trade with Isaiah, but Isaiah was injured. They just fleeced the Cavs without, the Cavs having knowledge of the trade, and then they couldn't go back on it because of all the drama. So I completely agree.
Oh. Okay, well, there you go. But the point that I'm making is Masai Ujiri, he's making hard choices, right? Decisions that would make him fired. If this sort of experiment didn't work out, if the Raptors tanked or peaked in the round 1 or round 2, I think that a lot of the onus would be on him. There would be a lot of hard questions being asked. And I'm sure that a lot of GMs around the league, they're up for a challenge, but not to that extent. So Masai Ujiri, what he's done has been commendable, but just the risks that he's had to take and the amount that he's put on the line, I think that separates him as one of the great GMs. So you're definitely right. Calculated risk. Yeah. But, I mean, Ben, listen, you're trading away for a superstar, but a superstar who played how many games in the past season?
Oh, yeah.
Who may or may not want to stay, and then who may leave you with no assets after? I mean, that's not even that smart. Looking at it now, you'd say, I'd love to have a guy like Kawhi Leonard. But at the time, that is risky as can be.
Yeah, but the thing about Masai Ujiri, because you brought up the risk-taking, and Masai, he certainly makes gutsy moves. but everything he does, he knew Kawhi Leonard was a top 3 player before he got hurt, and he trusted the fact, obviously you have to trust that he's going to get healthy and take all the information that you can, but he made that gutsy move to pick up a top 3 player, and it worked out for him. But to kind of why I want to veer away from the risk, because one GM that also took a lot of risks was Brian Colangelo, and he took the risk on Rudy Gay, he took the risk on bringing in Hedo Turkoglu to that big contract, and they're risks, but they aren't calculated risks. And Masai Ujiri,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, Masai Ujiri makes the risks that make sense, that will have good payoffs, and you'll be able to survive if they don't work out. Because if the Kawhi Leonard situation didn't work out, we still had OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet to fall back on, and our rebuild is immediately back in full force, and we probably still make the playoffs with that roster, in my opinion, without Kawhi Leonard choosing to play this season. So it's calculated smart risks from Masai Ujiri, and it's just the culture, everything he's built with this team. It's truly remarkable.
I totally agree, Ben. And it's totally, you're right, the risk, the reward. But still, with that being said, he is doing things that other GMs, they might not do. So it's good to have him around.
Yep.
It's good that he's staying. It's good that he didn't go to the Wizards, because that would have been a very hurtful franchise to leave us for. But I can't even imagine the banter that we would get from their camp in terms of the insults. But that's it. The pieces are falling into place, Ben, and it feels good.
Yeah, I remember, I think before we even started the podcast, you and I talking about all the rumors of Masai Ujiri trying to be stolen away from the Knicks, and now the Wizards. Hopefully this puts to rest any other rumors, any other banter of any NBA teams, because I can deal with the Kawhi Leonard, I can deal with any of the players being stolen away, but Masai Ujiri, I will fight to the death to keep him on the roster. But let us know what you guys think. Do you think Masai Ujiri is the most valuable piece of the Toronto Raptors? Both of us are in agreement, and I think at face value it's a hot take because of what Kawhi has done this season, but he's a truly remarkable man, truly remarkable GM. Let us know what your thoughts on Masai are in the comment section below. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. Ryker, you have any last words?
That's it for me, Ben. Cheers.